and a soft golden light touched the wings of the sleek white jet parked on the runway. Inside the terminal, wealthy passengers moved with quiet confidence. Men in suits, women in designer clothes, security guards standing tall near the glass doors. Everything looked calm, normal, perfect. Until she walked in. A tall black woman around 40 years old, dressed in a simple gray blazer and dark blue jeans. No fancy bag, no gold jewelry, just a leather notebook in her hand and quiet strength in her eyes. Her name was Elena Brooks. She walked with grace, her steps silent but firm. People turned to look, not because she made a scene, but because she didn't. The front desk lady glanced up, surprised. "Can I help you?" Elena nodded politely. "I'm on the 7:45 to New York, seat 2B. The woman frowned. "That's a private jet, ma'am. May I see your invitation?" Elena calmly showed her boarding slip. The staff member checked it twice, her eyes narrowing. Strange, this was printed from executive access. Still, she gave a fake smile. "Right this way." Elena walked toward the boarding gate. But the whispering had already started. The flight crew notices on board the jet. The crew was preparing for departure. Chloe, the head flight attendant, noticed Elena before she even entered the cabin. She doesn't match the guest list, she muttered under her breath to Mark, the co-pilot. She looks out of place. Mark gave a quick look and shrugged. Probably someone's assistant. Chloe smirked. Then she shouldn't be in seat 2B. That seat is reserved for VIP clients only. When Elena entered, she paused for a moment, looking at each detail of the luxurious jet. Polished mahogany walls, leather seats, champagne chilling in silver buckets. She placed her notebook on the seat gently, then sat down and looked out. The window. Chloe walked over with a tight smile. "Excuse me, miss. Are you sure you're in the right seat?" Elena turned her calm gaze toward her. "Yes, this is 2B. That's what my ticket says." Chloe scanned her again, eyes judgmental. "It's just, we usually don't have guests flying alone in that seat. And, may I ask, who invited you?" Elena smiled faintly. "I don't need an invitation." Chloe's face stiffened. "Of course." She walked away but leaned toward another attendant. "Keep an eye on her. Something feels off." Whispers and looks. The jet filled slowly. A few wealthy businessmen arrived. A famous actress walked in, with her assistant. Nobody noticed Elena anymore, except the crew. They kept glancing, they whispered. Someone even laughed quietly when Elena took out a notebook and started writing. "She's journaling," one crew member said. "What is this, economy class?" Elena heard it. She just didn't respond. She had heard worse. Much worse. Mid-air disrespect an hour into the flight, while drinks were being served, Chloe returned to Elena's seat. "Would you like champagne?" she asked, flatly. "No, thank you." "Orange juice? Coffee?" "I'm fine." Chloe hesitated, pretending to look busy, then leaned slightly closer. "I hope you're enjoying your flight. But next time, maybe ask your employer to book a more appropriate seat." Elena looked at her, confused. "I don't have an employer." Chloe blinked. "Oh, so you're exactly who I'm supposed to be." Chloe straightened, her cheeks red. "I see." She walked away quickly. Mark, who had been watching, raised an eyebrow. "What did she say?" Chloe hissed under her breath. "She's either lying or she's crazy." Trouble builds back in the cockpit. Mark pulled out. His tablet. "Passenger in 2B, he typed to the operations manager. "Seems suspicious. Doesn't match the usual profile. Requesting verification." The message was sent quietly. Within minutes, a reply came back. "Name, Elena Brooks. No red flags. Proceed." Still, Mark felt uneasy. He wasn't used to seeing someone like her, sitting so quietly in such an important seat. She's watching everything, he told Chloe. Even the controls near her seat. Chloe nodded. We can't ignore this. What if she's dangerous? The air inside the jet was tense. After the short exchange with Elena, head flight attendant Chloe walked back to the service area with tight lips and a heavy heart. She didn't like how calm that woman was. Quiet people, she believed, were always hiding something, and Elena Brooks was too quiet. Who is she, really? Chloe leaned closer to co-pilot Mark, who was now sipping his coffee near the back of the cabin. She's not normal, Chloe whispered. Mark looked up. You think she's dangerous? Chloe nodded. Maybe not dangerous, but definitely suspicious. Mark shrugged. Her name cleared. Operations confirmed she's allowed. Chloe frowned. Still, that seat is always reserved for top investors or executives, not someone walking in with a leather notebook like she's a school teacher. They both glanced toward seat 2B. Elena was still sitting there, calm, peaceful, staring out the window. She hadn't said a word in 30 minutes. Small talk, big opinions. In the crew cabin, the rest of the flight attendants had joined the gossip. She didn't even smile when I greeted her, said Lana, a junior attendant. Most passengers at least pretend to be polite. She refused champagne, another added. Like she's too good for it. Mark chuckled. Maybe she's broke. Borrowed the ticket from someone. Chloe's voice was cold. I just want to know why a woman like her is in that seat. They all nodded quietly. Not a single person asked the most important question. What if she belongs there? Elena. Listen's Elena sat quietly in her seat. She could hear everything. The cabin wasn't as private as the crew thought. Their voices, though soft, reached her ears easily. But she didn't turn. She didn't react. Instead, she opened her notebook and began to write. Lines of neat handwriting filled the page. Calm thoughts. Deep reflections. She had been in this position before. This wasn't new. Flashback. Years ago. 10 years ago, Elena had been a flight engineer trainee. She remembered walking into rooms where people didn't look like her, where she was the only woman, the only black woman. She remembered the smirks, the whispered jokes, the questions. Are you the assistant? Are you lost? But she had never shouted, never argued. She had let her work speak, and slowly. She rose, from engineer to aviation consultant, and then into something bigger. But they didn't know that. Not yet. Mark sends another message. Mark typed another message to operations. Passenger in 2B continues to act silently. No engagement. Unusual behavior. Please confirm again who she is. He waited. 10 minutes passed. Then a new reply came in. Stop questioning her. She has top clearance. Do not disturb. Mark raised his eyebrows. Chloe peeked over his shoulder. Top clearance? They exchanged looks. That only made them more curious. More trouble from Chloe. Chloe couldn't help herself. She picked up the intercom and made a soft announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, we ask all guests to remain seated and avoid touching emergency panels or equipment near your seat. Her eyes met Elena's as she said it. It was a message for one person, and everyone knew it. Elena closed her notebook gently. A kind voice. Appears suddenly Ms. Raymond, a retired teacher sitting in seat 4A, leaned toward Elena. She smiled kindly. Some people forget how to be polite in the skies, she said softly. You've been very patient, dear. Elena smiled back. Thank you. I'm used to storms. Ms. Raymond tilted her head. But this time, I think the storm is about to flip. Elena's eyes sparkled just for a moment. The captain notices. The noise in the cockpit, the captain, James Conway, noticed the back-and-forth messages on his system screen. He frowned. Something wasn't right. Why was his co-pilot so interested in a woman whose credentials had already cleared? He picked up the radio. Mark, he said. Please come up here. A sudden shift in airback in the cabin, the mood changed. The crew looked nervous now. Their whispers had turned to questions. Lana walked past Elena again, more carefully this time. She noticed the notebook had a small gold emblem on the corner. It read, E. Brooks Aviation Group. Her eyes widened. She had heard that name before. Somewhere in the industry. A company that had helped fund luxury jet designs. She walked quickly back to the crew. I think we made a mistake, she whispered. Clear, but inside the aircraft something else was happening. Tension, silence, and quiet eyes watching Elena Brooks. The crew's growing concern. In the galley, Chloe leaned over the counter, eyes wide. She has a notebook with a gold emblem, whispered Lana, the junior flight attendant. Chloe looked confused. What did it say? E. Brooks Aviation Group. Chloe paused. That name sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. Mark, the co-pilot, returned from the cockpit. His face looked pale. The captain said to drop it, he muttered. He told me not to disturb her again. What? Chloe snapped. Mark nodded. Apparently she has top-level clearance. The system flagged her as do not interfere. Chloe bit her lip. Why didn't anyone tell us? No one had an answer. Passengers start to notice. Meanwhile, some passengers were beginning to notice the strange energy inside the jet. People shifted in their seats. A soft hum of whispers floated through the air. One man asked, "Why does the crew keep staring at that woman in 2B?" Another passenger replied, "I don't know. She looks peaceful to me." But rumors spread quickly. Maybe she's famous. Maybe she's dangerous. Maybe she's pretending to be someone she's not. And through it all, Elena just kept looking out the window. The emergency light flickers. Suddenly, a small red light blinked near the back of the cabin. It wasn't dangerous, just a signal showing a loose overhead bin. Still, Chloe rushed to check it. Her nerves were on edge. Mark followed behind her, pretending not to panic. As Chloe closed the bin, she whispered, "If she owns that seat, why didn't she say something?" Mark answered quietly, "Maybe she doesn't need to prove herself." That thought made Chloe even more nervous. The captain makes a call-up in the cockpit. Captain James Conway stared at the file now open on his screen. Passenger name, Elena Maurice Brooks. Status, owner-level clearance flag, private jet owner. Notes, founder of E. Brooks Aviation Group, jet partner Tier A. He leaned back slowly in his chair. "My God," he whispered. "She owns this jet." Meanwhile, Elena sat quietly, notebook closed now, hands resting in her lap. She thought about her past. The first time she walked into a hangar and asked to buy her first small aircraft, they laughed at her. The time she attended, a private jet conference, and security blocked her at the entrance. And now, on her own jet, being judged again. Some things never change, she thought. But deep down, she didn't feel angry. She felt ready. The passenger who knew from seat 4A, Ms. Raymond, the retired teacher, spoke up again. She looked across the aisle and said loudly enough for others to hear, "I know that name. Elena Brooks. I read about her." A few heads turned. She was featured in a business magazine, a black woman who started her own aviation company. She's one of the youngest private jet owners in the country. The cabin went quiet. Someone whispered, "No way." Another said, "That can't be her." Ms. Raymond smiled at Elena. "It is." Sudden change in atmosphere. In the galley, Chloe's earpiece buzzed. It was the captain. "Treat the woman in 2B with the highest respect. She owns this plane. I repeat, she owns this jet. You will apologize immediately." Chloe's face turned red. Mark's jaw dropped. Lana just stared at the floor. Walking the walk of shame, Chloe took a deep breath and walked slowly towards seat 2B. The passengers watched. Everything felt quiet, like the air had stopped moving. Elena looked up. "Yes?" she asked softly. Chloe swallowed. "Ms. Brooks, on behalf of the entire crew, I want to apologize for our behavior." Elena said nothing. Chloe continued. "We did not know who you were. That's no excuse. We judged you unfairly." Elena looked into her eyes, calm, powerful. Then she nodded once. Apology accepted. Chloe turned and walked back slowly. It felt like the longest walk of her life. The jet continued flying smoothly, but inside the cabin, emotions were no longer calm. People had just learned that the quiet black woman in seat 2B was not just a passenger. She owned the plane, and that changed everything. A different kind of silence. Elena Brooks sat with grace. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't argued, but her silence had spoken louder than any words. Now the same people who whispered about her were too scared to even meet her eyes. Flight attendant Lana refilled her water with shaking hands. Chloe kept looking over nervously, guilt written on her face. Even Mark, the co-pilot, didn't come out of the cockpit again. But not everyone was sorry. In seat 1A, right in front of Elena, sat a man named Mr. Gerald Whitmore. He was tall, older, and dressed in an expensive gray suit. He had boarded the plane late and hadn't heard the earlier drama. But now, he had questions. He leaned toward Chloe and asked, "What's going on? Why is everyone so focused on that woman behind me?" Chloe hesitated. "She's the owner, sir." Whitmore raised an eyebrow. "Her?" Chloe nodded. "Yes, sir. Elena Brooks. She owns this aircraft." Whitmore chuckled under his breath. "A woman like her? Own a jet like this? Are we sure it's not a mistake?" Chloe didn't respond. Whitmore's challenge, moments later, Whitmore stood up and turned to Elena. He gave a polite but forced smile. "Excuse me, Ms. Brooks, is it? I hear you're the owner of this aircraft." Elena looked up, calm as ever. "That's correct," she said. Whitmore laughed lightly. "That's impressive and surprising. You see, I've been in aviation for 22 years, and I've never heard your name." Elena smiled politely. "Maybe you weren't listening in the right rooms." Some passengers chuckled quietly. Whitmore's smile faded, trying to prove himself. Whitmore continued, "Louder now. I personally know people at this jet company. Executives, managers, pilots. You'd think they would have mentioned a major owner, especially someone so new." Elena closed her notebook and slowly stood up. Everyone watched. The flight had never felt this quiet before. Elena speaks. She looked at Whitmore with calm strength. "My name is Elena Brooks. I started Brooks Aviation Group 9 years ago. I've helped design and fund over 20 private aircraft, including this one." She pointed to the exit door calmly. "This jet was custom built under my guidance. Every seat, every panel, every inch of it." The passengers were stunned. Whitmore opened his mouth, but no words came out. Elena continued, "I don't need your approval, Mr. Whitmore. I don't need your connections. I am the connection. Respect is earned, not given." She sat back down slowly. The cabin burst into quiet claps. Even some of the crew members nodded in respect. Ms. Raymond smiled proudly from her seat. Whitmore sat down, red-faced and speechless. The captain chimes. Suddenly, a soft ding rang from the speakers. It was the captain's voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I'd like to take a moment to recognize Ms. Elena Brooks, the owner of this aircraft and a leader in modern aviation. We're honored to have her on board today." More clapping followed. Elena stayed quiet. She didn't need to say anything more. Quiet. Power later, Chloe approached Elena again. Her voice was low, respectful. "Ms. Brooks, I just wanted to say thank you. for how you handled everything. Elena looked at her, eyes kind. I've dealt with worse, she said simply. But every flight is a chance to teach someone something. Chloe nodded, humbled. Some were reading, others were resting. But Elena Brooks knew something was still coming. And she was right. The vibration that changed everything. Elena's phone, kept silent all this time, began to vibrate on her tray table. She looked at the screen. It wasn't a normal number, no name, just unknown caller. She answered quietly, "This is Elena." A low male voice spoke. "Ms. Brooks, this is Agent Miller, Homeland Security. We need you to stay calm." Her heart paused, but her face stayed calm. "I'm listening," she said. Whispers of a threat. "We received a report from the ground team," the agent said. "Someone filed a suspicious activity warning from your jet. They claimed you may be a security threat." Elena's eyes didn't move. Her voice remained calm. "I assume you checked." "The name of the person you're calling?" "Yes, ma'am," he said quickly. "That's why we're reaching out. The complaint looks fake, but we need you to confirm something. Do you feel safe?" Elena paused. She looked around the plane, at the crew, at Whitmore, still sitting in silence, at the co-pilot, sneaking glances from the galley. Then she answered, "I do now." A deeper warning. Agent Miller lowered his voice. "Ma'am, there's more. This report wasn't just sent to us. It was also forwarded to international air traffic. If it had reached the wrong hands, the plane might have been grounded mid-air." Elena felt a wave of cold run down her spine, but she didn't show it. "Understood," she said. "Whoever did this may be trying to damage your name." The suspicion grows. After the call, Elena sat still, her eyes focused straight ahead. The mood in the plane felt different again. She knew what had happened. Someone on board didn't just doubt her. They tried to ruin her. Back to the crew in the galley. Chloe was checking the service log when Captain James came out of the cockpit. He looked serious. "I just got a call from headquarters," he said quietly. "Someone sent a report about Ms. Brooks. Said she's a flight risk." Chloe's face turned pale. "But that's not true," she said. "She's the owner. We all saw the files." "I know," the captain said. "But this could have been bad. They almost alerted the wrong people." Elena stands again. She stood up slowly from her seat. Once again, the passengers turned to look. There was no announcement, no drama, just a woman rising with quiet power. She walked to the front of the plane and asked to speak with the captain. Met her at the cockpit door. "The private conversation, Captain," she said softly. "I received a call. Homeland Security." He nodded slowly. "I got the same message. Someone on this flight tried to use my identity against me, to cause panic, to stop the plane." Captain James looked down. "We believe it was a false report. But yes, it came from inside the aircraft." Elena nodded. "Then we need to find out who it was." Tension returns to the cabinets. Elena returned to her seat. The captain made an announcement. "For safety reasons, we will be reviewing all internal activity on this flight. Any misuse of communication systems will be reported. Passengers are requested to remain in their seats." The tension returned. Everyone wondered, who tried to bring Elena down? Mr. Whitmore's face in seat 1A. Gerald Whitmore looked nervous. He kept checking his phone. He kept looking over his shoulder. Ms. Raymond watched him with narrow eyes. Chloe noticed, too. Was it him? No one said anything. Not yet. Elena's thoughts back in her seat. Elena opened her notebook. She wrote just 3 words. Power tests patience. She wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The plane flew high above the clouds, but inside the jet, tension was rising fast. Everyone was silent. Nervous eyes moved from face to face. Someone had reported Elena Brooks, the owner of the plane, as a threat. But who? That question now filled the air like a storm about to break. The quiet, before the truth Chloe walked down the aisle, offering water bottles, but most passengers refused. Even the small noise of plastic cracking felt loud. Whitmore looked out the window. His face was tight. His hands were shaking slightly, and Elena noticed. Captain's request. Suddenly, the captain's voice came through the speaker. "Ms. Elena Brooks, please join me in the cockpit for a short conversation," whispers began. Elena stood up and walked calmly to the front. When she entered the cockpit, the door closed behind her. "The flight data doesn't lie inside, Captain James." And co-pilot Mark were waiting. The captain pointed to a screen. "This shows communication logs from inside the aircraft, text messages, app activity, everything routed through our satellite." Elena looked at the screen. At the top, one message caught her eye. A report sent to Homeland Security from a tablet inside the aircraft, registered to Gerald Whitmore. The owner's eyes. Hardened Elena said nothing for a moment. Her face was stone, but her eyes were sharp, cold, focused, unblinking. "Did he think no one would find out?" she finally asked. The captain shook his head. "Maybe he thought you'd be removed before you could prove him wrong." The trap is set. Elena stepped out of the cockpit. The passengers looked up again, but this time she wasn't quiet. She walked straight to Mr. Whitmore's seat. The confrontation, "Mr. Whitmore," she said calmly, "did you enjoy your flight?" Whitmore looked up, trying to act calm. "I suppose." "Why do you ask?" "Because I'm wondering," Elena said, "if falsely reporting the owner of this plane gave you the kind of thrill you were looking for." Gasps everyone heard. Whitmore's face turned pale. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. Elena pulled a paper from her folder. "This is a copy of the report. It was sent from a device registered to your name, linked to this aircraft's Wi-Fi. It shows the exact time, exact file, exact words." His excuses fall apart. Whitmore stood up, now red with panic. "I was just being careful," he said quickly. "You were acting strange. The crew was uncomfortable. I was just trying to be safe." Elena didn't blink. Safe from what, Mr. Whitmore? A woman of color in business class? Or the fact that she had more power than you? The cabin went silent again. Whitmore looked around. No one was on his side now. Not the crew, not the passengers, not even Chloe. The decision Captain James came forward. "Mr. Whitmore, due to the serious nature of your false report, you will not be flying with us again. You'll be questioned when we land." Whitmore tried to argue, but no one listened anymore. He sat down slowly, defeated. Elena's calm power as she returned to her seat. Chloe whispered, "That was amazing." But Elena only said, "Truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to stand." She sat down, calm once again. Ms. Raymond smiles from across the aisle. Ms. Raymond, the older woman in pearls, gave a proud smile. "You handled him with class," she said. Elena smiled back. Sometimes silence speaks louder than anger. The sun started to set. Inside the cabin, the mood had completely changed. People sat quietly, some thoughtful, some ashamed, but all of them were watching Elena Brooks. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't threatened, yet somehow she had become the strongest person on the plane. The announcement. Just before landing, Captain James made one final announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for flying with us. We'd also like to recognize Ms. Elena Brooks, the owner of this aircraft, for her patience and leadership during this flight." Claps filled the cabin. This time, they were real. Even Chloe, who had once judged her, clapped the loudest. The silent walkers. The plane touched down and rolled to the private hangar. People began to stand, gather their things, and prepare to leave. But No one rushed. Everyone moved with quiet respect. Elena stood and picked up her small designer bag. No extra luggage, no big speech, just dignity. Whitmore tries one last time. Gerald. Whitmore waited near the front door of the plane. As Elena approached, he forced a smile. I just want to say, maybe I overreacted. Elena looked at him calmly. No, you misjudged, and you tried to hurt someone because you felt uncomfortable with their success. Whitmore looked down. Elena leaned in slightly and whispered, That's your burden to carry, not mine. Then she walked off the plane. Chloe stops her just outside. The aircraft! Chloe rushed up to Elena. Ms. Brooks, she said softly, I wanted to say I'm sorry. Elena turned to her. You weren't the only one, but you're the one trying to learn. That matters. Chloe looked relieved. A lesson for all us passengers exited and entered the small terminal. They all looked at Elena in a new way, not as a stranger, not as a threat, but as a leader. A quiet example that power doesn't always need noise. Sometimes, it just needs presence. Ms. Raymond's words before leaving, the older woman in pearls, Ms. Raymond, touched Elena's arm gently. You didn't just fly this plane, she said with a smile. You flew above them. Elena smiled. Thank you. Back on solid ground outside the terminal, a black car waited for Elena. As the driver opened the door, a journalist nearby, who had somehow heard whispers of the in-flight incident, tried to approach. Miss Brooks, is it true someone reported you as a threat? Elena paused. She smiled, looked into the camera, and said simply, When you challenge the story others write about you, be ready to write your own ending. And then, without another word, she stepped into the car. Days had passed since the flight. The story of Elena Brooks quietly spread, not through headlines but through people. Flight crew whispered about her strength. Passengers told friends about what they saw, and someone leaked the full story online. But Elena? She didn't say much. She let the truth speak for itself. A new chapter begins in her quiet home office, surrounded by books and soft jazz. Elena opened her laptop. Her assistant had left a note. Media requests, 13 interviews, 5 podcasts, 1 documentary offer. She smiled, but she didn't accept any, yet. Instead, she wrote a short blog post, just a few paragraphs. She titled it, The Sky Was Never the Limit. The message that touched thousands. In that post, she wrote, I was judged for how I looked, not for what I built. I was insulted, doubted, and nearly erased from my own seat. But I did not raise my voice. I raised the standard. That post went viral. People shared it everywhere. Thousands of women messaged her. So did young girls. Even some flight crew sent letters of apology. Back to the airport 1 week later, Elena returned to the airport, not as a passenger, not as someone hidden in seat 2B. This time, she walked straight into a press conference. Her company had rented the space. Dozens of reporters were waiting, but Elena didn't come to talk about herself. She came to talk about change. A new program is born. Elena announced something bold. A training program for airline staff focused on respect, bias awareness, and dignity. A mentorship program for women in aviation business. And most important, a scholarship fund for girls of color who wanted to fly, not just in planes, but in life. The room clapped, then clapped louder, then stood up. Because now, she wasn't just the woman who owned a plane, she was becoming a symbol. What happened to Whitmore? Someone asked her during the Q&A. Do you plan to press charges against Mr. Whitmore for the false report? Elena gave a soft smile. No, I think he already faced the worst punishment. What's that? A reporter asked. He saw what real power looks like. and realized he never had it. One last flight that evening, Elena walked toward her private jet again. Same plane, same crew, same seat, 2B. But now, everyone greeted her with respect. Chloe stood at the door. "I reviewed your training plan," she said with a warm smile. "I signed up." Elena smiled back. "Then I'll see you in class." Ms. Raymond's gift. Just before takeoff, one of the crew handed Elena a small wrapped box. "There was a message from Ms. Raymond," she said. "She asked us to give this to you if we ever saw you again." Elena opened the box. Inside was a silver pin shaped like a bird in flight and a note. "You reminded us that true grace flies without wings." The final words, as the jet rose into the sky again. Elena looked out the window. The clouds passed by slowly. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't proving anything. She was simply free.